Well, some aspects of life in ultra-conservative Saudi Arabia do appear to be changing, but those who speak out still face the risk of severe punishment, and includes activists who challenge the system. Well, a recent example of this was that of Manahel al-Otaibi, who is a fitness instructor with a big social media following in Saudi Arabia. Well, she's just been detained for more than 6 months, accused of launching a propaganda campaign. Well, amongst the issues she spoke out about was the country's male guardianship laws and rules about how women dress. Well, the 29-year-old's case is being handled by a court that's more usually tasked with terrorist-related cases. Well, let's get more on the overall situation in Saudi Arabia, and we can speak to Lina Al-Hatlul, who is the head of monitoring and an activist at ALQST, which is a London-based group advocating for human rights in Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much for joining us. Your sister, Lujain, was imprisoned, is now forbidden from leaving Saudi Arabia because of her activism. First of all, just tell us, how is your sister right now?
Well, my sister Lujain is on a travel ban. My whole family is on a travel ban. And being on a travel ban in Saudi Arabia means that you're in constant fear. After her release, she was targeted with Pegasus, which is a spyware, zero-click spyware. So she knows she's surveilled, and anything she does could land her in jail again.
And you yourself are, of course, quite outspoken. Can you go to Saudi Arabia?
Well, if I go back to Saudi Arabia, I will most probably be imprisoned. Salma al-Shihab, who is a Saudi, not very famous activist, she had less than 100 followers. She only retweeted me, and in her charges, she has been sentenced to 27 years for retweeting me. So I guess I will see prison if I go back to Saudi.
And does this mean as well you have to be careful about what you say even when you're not in Saudi? Because what you say, couldn't it have repercussions for your sister or for other members of your family who are still there?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, it's, of course, the risk management, a daily risk management I have to really consider. But the thing is, when we were silent at the very beginning, when my sister was arrested and that at the time she was being tortured, we decided not to speak up because we thought that this is the right way to save her and, to find a solution. But at the end of the day, Saudi Arabia only cares about its image and about public pressure. So the louder I am, the better it is, I think.
But, I mean, a lot of people will be wondering, it's a really confusing situation for people, certainly in this part of the world. I mean, we're seeing football players going over there. Our friends are posting photographs on social media of their holidays in Saudi Arabia, something people didn't do even a couple of years ago. So it seems like Saudi Arabia is changing. The message we're getting is that the country is becoming more tolerant, more modern. And at the same time, we hear stories like what's happening to your sister. I mean, it's almost as if there are two Saudi Arabias.
Absolutely. I think you just summarized the situation. There are actually two Saudi Arabias, one for Westerners and one for the Saudi people. You mentioned the case of Manahel al-Ataibi, the case of my sister, and these are only like the symbolic cases that managed to go out, because for my sister's case is because I'm abroad. Manahel's case is when her sister had to flee Saudi Arabia to speak about her sister. And another example, for example, is the LGBTQ issue in Saudi Arabia. They say that they welcome tourists who are part of the community, but then you have people like Tariq Aziz, who just fled Saudi Arabia after spending a year in prison for tweeting on this matter. So at the end of the day, what is really happening is a huge PR campaign that Saudi Arabia is undertaking to flirt with the West, to have tourists visit the country. But the situation for Saudis has not changed, and it has even gotten worse with the unprecedented prison sentences for tweets, over 30 years for tweeting, the unprecedented death penalty rates. Even minors still get executed. So at the end of the day, the situation has not changed. It's a dictatorship. It's a police state. Trials are always behind closed doors. The murder of Khashoggi, why isn't anyone talking about this anymore? It's just very, it represents really what the situation inside Saudi Arabia. Everyone is very scared to speak. Anything can lead you to jail, but actually tourists are very, very satisfied with the situation, and everyone is turning a blind eye on the situation of the Saudi people.
And when it comes to women's rights, I mean, women still need permission to travel, don't they? And to get married, and you can't get an apartment without a male guardian or a male guarantor. I mean, are things getting any better for women? Because we're told they are. And, you know, the image that we're seeing is that perhaps there are more Saudi women making the headlines, perhaps behind the wheel of a car, perhaps in a sporting event. Is that, again, do you think, just projection of this image the country wants us to see?
Well, there has been changes, that's for sure. But the changes have been led by women, and the ones who have been fighting for it have been charged with terrorism. And these changes, the problem is, as we see with the case of Manahel al-Ataibi, who's actually in her charges, she was charged with not wearing a abaya. So the changes and the red lines are not clear anymore. So it really creates an atmosphere of constant fear of people not knowing what is allowed or not. And at the end of the day, if we say that the situation is better for women, it's when women can lead the fight, they can ask for their own rights. You cannot just impose changes and say that women are in a better situation now and imprison them when they ask for their rights. It's just another new kind of repression. You give the rights that you think are good for your own image. I'm talking about the government, and you do not allow them to lead the fights and to really build the society that they want to live in. So the male guardianship system still exists. We are still considered as minors till the end of our lives. And if we ask for changes, we go to prison. So I don't think that the situation has fundamentally changed. It's still a very structured repression towards women.
There is this campaign called Vision 2030, and it's the country's economic and social reform agenda. I mean, its name suggests that it's not yet finished because we're only 2023. It does include, doesn't it, women's rights and various other social reforms. Do you think there's any argument for saying, look, this isn't going to happen overnight, but let's give them some time. Let's see what Vision 2030 brings us. And maybe Antony Blinken lecturing the Crown Prince will have the reverse effect from the effect that you and I would like to see.
Well, first, the question is, give time to whom? We Saudi people want to be part of this vision. We don't want it to be imposed on us. And that is why actually we, as Saudi activists abroad, we have the People's Vision, which was built on after the Saudi 2030 was published, because we think that there's a chapter that's missing actually in the Vision 2030 is the Saudi people. We are not part of the construction of the new state of Saudi Arabia. We have been forgotten. So basically it's just on paper a vision that has not included the Saudi people. And you know, some of the principles in the vision, we have been advocating for it, but arrested for that, exactly. So at the end of the day, it's only on paper, and the people who have been advocating for it, the people who have been agreeing on these principles for a long time have been arrested. So do they truly want to change the country, or do they just want it to be part of their PR campaign to repress Saudi people even more? I don't think that it is a vision made for the Saudi people. I think that it is a vision made for the government and to empower and legitimize an authoritarian regime.
Okay, well, I would love to carry on the conversation. I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Lina Al-Hathlul, we wish you and your sister Lujain all the very best. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.